Welcome to the next unit. We have two principles that we have already mastered in our first two sessions. Our significance comes from who we are and not from what we do. While most people seek to prove their significance by what they accomplish, we know that being God's adopted children causes us to be eternally significant. So we're free from the ugly pressure to prove we're important by doing impressive things. But that doesn't mean we lose all our initiative to do significant things. The talent, the creativity, the abilities God has given us will be fully used. However, the basic purpose for using them is changed, and that change in purpose is the second principle. Principle number 2, the significance of what we do is the result of who we are. As God's adopted children, we're to be involved in His plans to adopt as many of Adam's children as possible. He provides us with His resources to do His work, so we can go anywhere, live anywhere, enter any profession, do anything we desire, as long as it doesn't disgrace His name, as long as we're involved in His plans to adopt Adam's children. Now, in our last session, Alfred was described as a son with plans of his own. He felt no permanent obligation to tell the sons of Adam they could be adopted. As a son of Adam himself, he was foolishly trying to become significant as Adam's child by what he did, and as an adopted son of his father, he was enjoying the rights of his sonship without a willingness to be involved in the activities of a son. You know, many Christians find themselves in this push-pull. They sense there's a civil war going on inside themselves. There is one part of their life wanting to be free to live like a son of Adam, while another part inside says, "Hey, you've been adopted. Why don't you live in the present? Your new Father loves you. He's provided for all your needs. Why do you keep your ties to your old life? If your new life isn't really a better one, why be miserable by staying in that new life at all? Why not just live among Adam's sons and be done with it? Why have one foot in each world?" If that thought has ever crossed your mind, you'll be interested in the further history of Alfred. After his talk with his brother James, Alfred discussed the matter with his girlfriend, who you recall was one of Adam's really red-hot daughters. She encouraged him to be his own master. So Alfred went to his father, and he said, "Father, I want you to know I appreciate all you've done for me since you adopted me as a small child, and you've never done anything to me that has made me bitter toward you. You've loved me and you've been patient with me, but I have a basic problem. You and I have different lifestyles, and I can't ever be happy living in your house while I personally desire to party and live another way. Every time I enter your house, I feel the difference between our values. So I've decided I'm going to move out. I'm going to go and live among Adam's children. I'll be free then to live my own way, and I'll be far enough away from you that neither of us will be hurt by our differences. I do love you, but for me to be happy, I just need to put some distance between us." Well, his father was silent for a long time, and then he said, "You are my son. Nothing you say or do will ever change that. Remaining my son is not a reward for agreeing with my values. If you reject them, you do not lose your sonship. I will always be your father. I am not withdrawing from you in the way you are withdrawing from me. And you're free to return to my house at any time. Your room will always be here, waiting for you." And then Alfred continued, "Father, I have something in mind. You told James and me you were prepared to make us administrators of your estate so we could do anything we desired, and you placed only one request on your offer, that we be involved in telling Adam's children about you and your deep desire to adopt them also. But I really don't feel any desire to do that. I have other things I prefer to do with my life. But I'd like to know, would you let me administer your estate without that provision? I'd like to have funds to live on when I leave here, and funds to set up my own business. Now, I'll get a portion of your estate when you die. If I could have it now, it would sure make things easier for me." Well, let me ask you a question. If you had been Alfred's father, what would you have said? Do you feel angry inside over Alfred's selfishness? Do you think he had a lot of nerve? Would you refuse to help him financially, knowing he's going to make a shambles out of his life with such self-centered plans? How would you respond? Well, let's think about what the father said. "Alfred, if you became my administrator, you would have to carry out my wishes for the use of the funds, and you have no desire to do that. So it's not possible for you to have that kind of a relationship to my money if you have no fellowship with me. But there's another alternative. In a sense, the choice you're making is the same as putting our relationship to death. If I were literally dead and our relationship were ended by my death, you would inherit a portion of my estate. So I'll arrange to give you your inheritance now. My lawyers will divide my assets in half and provide you with your half of my estate. Alfred, when I adopted you, I committed myself to do this for you, and as an adopted son, I legally cannot cut you out of my will, and I won't go back on my word or the adoption papers I signed." Well, Alfred was so centered on his own desires that he failed to see an important fact if he should take a portion of his father's wealth now. He would deprive his father of his own use of that part of his fortune for the rest of his own lifetime. You know, if the father's decision doesn't seem logical to you, you're missing the whole point. You see, in the eyes of the father, Alfred's significance rested solely in who he is, not in what he does. That's the point. The very fact that this is so hard for us to grasp, this proof is why we see our values have become so twisted. We can hardly conceive of a relationship in which what we do means nothing and who we are means everything. Oh, if we could catch that. Another real problem in your mind may be this. The father was losing his accumulated wealth by his decision. Now, surely he was sharp enough to know that Alfred had poor judgment and would probably lose every cent. Wouldn't it be wiser to send him out without a penny, or at least to give to him a token grub stake to see how he would do? Why squander half a fortune on a foolish son? You know, that's a real problem, and you better think about it for a while until you understand why he did it, because there's a great secret waiting for you when you grasp that truth. Well, smiling, Alfred stood up. "Thanks, Father. That's an offer I can't refuse. You know, of course, how much I love and respect you, and I appreciate your making this transaction so easy for me." So he took the money. And in the days that followed, Alfred moved to a distant city His girlfriend shared his lavish apartment and his bed, and they quickly found themselves in the middle of the many social activities going on there. And of course, as you might expect, prominent men quickly agreed to help Alfred set up a business when they learned of his vast assets. Soon he had a plush office in a brand new skyscraper. And when people asked him about the source of his wealth, he was quite vague about it all. He learned quite early in his new life that people became uneasy when his father's name was mentioned, and occasionally his father's name was actually used as an epithet. Occasionally at a party when someone got quite drunk, terrible lies would be said about his father. He was often angered by those distortions because he knew they weren't true, but he kept quiet about his own relationship with him. He knew it would be bad for business for people to know too much about all that. And then, late one night at the office, the books revealed that one of his new partners was stealing him blind. His girlfriend had become attracted by the liquor cabinet and seemed to scream at him a great deal. And he began to see through the thin veneer of people's lives around him and recognized the many bitter conflicts inside all his friends, problems in marriages, heartaches with children, cheating in business, loneliness. Every life seemed to be filled with its own type of unhappiness. And then Alfred became involved in an affair with his young secretary, and she introduced him to cocaine. He spent more and more time at play, less and less time in his business. Slowly his friends drew away from him, and then his girlfriend took a large chunk of cash from the bank account and moved in with a partner who had also been stealing from his business. He seldom even thought of his father now or about his brother James. And then his CPA dropped the bomb. Somehow the businesses had all failed. The creditors and the bankers were demanding payment at once, and in less than 30 days, Alfred found himself bankrupt. After his furniture was repossessed and he was evicted by his landlord from the plush apartment, he couldn't find a friend in the world to provide a place to stay for a few weeks. Well, a few months before, Alfred had ordered his fancy new car with reclining seats. At the time, he had no idea it would be his house, that he'd sleep in it with a few of his clothes stuffed in the back seat. And then one muggy night, parked on the street, he rolled and tossed. And he said to himself, "I'm in such trouble. Even my father's hired servants live better than this. I wonder if he would hire me to work for him. One thing is sure, I'll never get a job or even a room in this town." And so he started the engine, turned onto the freeway, and drove all night and all the next day. Finally, he stopped in the driveway of his father's lovely mansion. He got out, rang the doorbell, and waited for a servant to answer. Instead, the father himself flung open the door. "Oh, son, I'm so glad you're back. Welcome home. Your room is waiting for you. I've had all the clothes you left pressed long ago. Everything is ready for your return. And I'll tell the cook to fix your favorite foods for dinner tonight. Oh, welcome. Freshen up and then come to the den. I'll wait to talk with you." Alfred's eyes filled with tears. "Father, I didn't come back to live here as your son. I gave up my rights to that when I left home. I had just hoped you might hire me to be one of your servants." Now, there's a twist for you. Earlier, the father had offered Alfred an opportunity to be a special kind of a servant, his own personal administrator. And Alfred wanted no part of it. Now, Alfred wants to be his servant, even a gardener or a cook. And then later on in the den, his father said, Alfred, I will never hire you to be a paid servant of mine. That's impossible. We have a relationship as a father and son. You can't be my son and be my employee too. Others may, but you cannot. You see, you are my son. All that will ever take place between us happens because of that fact. If you ever do decide you want to serve me, it must be because of who you are, not just because of a salary I pay you. Alfred was confused. Father, I confess I don't understand in the slightest what you're saying to me. And his father looked at him with eyes full of love. You're very tired, son. Let's save that for another time. Let's eat, and then you must get some rest. Dinner is ready. So it was then Alfred and James met again, and his brother's welcome was stiff and cold. Alfred knew he deserved the resentment he sensed, and he decided he'd just let the problem wait until they were alone together. So as they prepared to eat, their father said, I am thankful that my son Alfred, who was dead, has begun to live again. You have come home safe and sound. I am so grateful. Now I want our hearts to be bound together with cords that can't be broken. Enjoy your meal, my sons. It's good to be sitting at the table together again. Well, Alfred blinked back his tears. How could his father accept him so quickly after his selfishness and bad judgment? He ate in silence. And then he became aware that both James and his father were also silent. So finally, James exploded with bitter, angry words. Alfred, I resent your presence at this table. I've watched Father for months as he's worried about you. I've seen his shoulders sag and his heart break when the reports came back about your life. And then when you decide you want to come back, you walk in and sit into your old chair as though nothing had ever happened. Well, things aren't like they were before, and they'll never be the same again. They can't be. Father interrupted him. James, you do not understand a very important truth about me, even after years of living in this house as my adopted son. You and Alfred are both revealing the natures you inherited from Adam, but in exactly opposite ways. You feel your value in my eyes is greater than Alfred's because of what you have done. You stayed here, you've been a good son, and you think you feel that makes me more significant in your eyes. But both of you are equally wrong. My son, what must I do to help you realize that neither your good or bad choices cause you to be significant to me? You are my sons. That is the only thing that makes you significant. Nothing you do or do not do destroys that fact. I love you, but not because of your behaviors, but because you are my sons. James, you've never understood this. Can you not see that your own brother should be significant to you and me for no other reason than the relationships he has with you and with me? Dear, dear James, for a long time you've lived with a problem inside yourself, and now it's being revealed tonight at this table. Months ago you told me that while you love me deeply, you have no desire to help other children of Adam. Becoming adopted by me is something you don't care about for them. Your reason was clearly stated. You just don't have the love for them that I have, and the love that you have for me is not pure. Do you not see that the way you love has always been rooted in what others do for you? You don't love just because people are. You love them or reject them because of their actions. It is true even of your relationship to me, my son. You love me because of what I have done for you, and at the same time, you don't love Alfred because of the things he has done which you dislike. The real issue in your life, James, is that you have not accepted even yourself as having significance because of who you are, but because of what you have done. You are my son. Alfred is my son. I have not placed any conditions on either one of you. Both of you are unconditionally my sons. Nothing you do or do not do changes that. But Father, exclaimed James, is there no justice? How can Alfred do what he has done without being punished by you for it? Do I not deserve a reward above him for being a faithful son who has remained at home with you? Choked with pain, Alfred interrupted. Oh, James, if you only knew. My punishment is inside me, in my head and my heart. The wretchedness I feel inside myself is more than I can handle. Justice is being done. I am being punished. I'll live with the result of my past actions for the rest of my life. The shame of my past life will live on in my present and in my future. There is no way I'll ever be able to erase it. And Father spoke softly. Alfred, my son, you've been living among Adam's sons, and I've followed your activity carefully since you left home. The young lady you lived with trapped you into crack. Do you not think she carries wretchedness inside herself? And your partner who cheated you and then took her to live with him, how do you think he feels about himself? If you are miserable, do you think they feel any less wretched? The difference between you and them isn't the fact that you are my son and they are not. You have a relationship with me that makes it possible to be loved because of who you are in spite of what you have done. That would be the same for them. They have no home to come back to, no father to receive them. They go on living day after day in that condition without hope in the world. Do you want to return to them and help them? Would you like to live further with them, Alfred, and help them know what you know? And Alfred replied, Oh, Father, I'll never again do such stupid things. I've been fool enough for 6 lifetimes. The emptiness of life I have known is something I wish to never repeat again. Father stared deeply into Alfred's eyes. Finally, he said, Alfred, your friends in the city are significant to me. I don't wish them to go on living their wretched lives, missing the love and the relationship you have with me. I deeply desire to adopt them too. Can you understand that, my son? The love and acceptance you find at this table tonight is unlimited, and I want to give it to them as well. Do you believe they would finally discover the basics of life if they were also adopted by me? And Alfred replied, If they would only let you. I don't think they would ever consider having a relationship with you. You want to knock at the door of their heart, but you don't know how they talk about you, especially when they're drunk. And Father answered, Alfred, When you were with them, you never confessed you were my son. No one, including you, has ever represented my love for them and clearly explained it to them. Until my own sons share my offer of adoption and explain where true significance comes from, they'll go on trying to be significant through what they do. And until my sons tell them about me, who else will? And who knows whether they will accept or reject me? This is my desire. I want my sons to so realize that their significance is in this relationship that they will share it with all the poor children of Adam. The table is set. The banquet is ready. There's food for all. It only remains for you to go out and invite them to come in and join us. But the food on the table was almost cold. Not one of them had touched it. Alfred and James stared at their plates piled high with food, and Father slowly rose and lovingly patted both of them on their shoulders and left the room. Moments of silence passed, and then James got up and went to his bedroom. And famished after the days of hunger, Alfred ate alone, and there he just stuffed himself with food. But an unexplained peace existed in him for the first time in his memory. He didn't feel he had to accomplish something to be significant, to be known and respected. For the first time he realized he had a security. And softly he spoke aloud, I am significant. I am my Father's child. Nothing can ever be more important than that. What a fool I've been. Well, he knew his father would be sitting in the leather chair next to the fireplace in the den. And for the first time in his life, he longed to be with his father. He desired to listen, to understand, to show his deep love, to rethink all his old values. So he walked from the table to the den to be with his father. But meanwhile, James was sitting on the edge of his bed, staring out the window. On the horizon he saw the tall skyscrapers ablaze with lights, and his father's words rang in his ears. You love me because of what I have done for you. Was that true? Painfully, he admitted to himself it was. He had never given his father in return the same kind of love he had received. His father was significant to him because of what the father provided for him. And he hadn't realized until now how selfish he was, that he had never loved his father because of who the father was. So now it was James who spoke softly to himself. I have never really loved Father as I should. I've loved him for his help, his wealth, and for all the things he could give me. And I've cheated my Father of his significance just because he's my Father. He's significant whether he does anything for me or not. So James asked himself, would I love my father if he suddenly became penniless, or if he had a stroke that led him to be speechless? Strong emotions swelled up within him, and the spirit of Adam whispered in his ear, and with disgust he realized that one part of his mind was thinking, if he became like that, you'd put him in a rest home and forget about him. And James stood to his feet, shocked by the thoughts that were in his mind, and he clenched his fist and he said, no, I will not accept that. That's the way Adam thinks. I'm making a decision here and now. I will love my father simply because he is my father. And I will also love Alfred for who he is, my brother. He walked to the door of the den and peeked inside, and there he saw Alfred kneeling before his father, weeping. And his father had his hands on the son's shoulders, and he was saying, "My son, you have found yourself at last. I'm so glad." And so James knelt beside Alfred, slipping his arm through his brother's arm. "Father," he said, "I have found myself too. I have been more like Alfred in my heart than I have wanted to admit, and I have not returned your relationship of love with me with a love like it for you. Forgive me too, Father. And Alfred, I ask your forgiveness." That was quite a moment. The father dropped to his knees, embracing both sons in his arms. For a long moment, the three of them hugged each other, weeping. The tears of the sons were washing away wrong values. Things new were being born within them. It was the most important moment in life for them. Ever since the time they had been adopted by the Father, there had never been a moment like this. Ralph Neighbor here, Zai Qian, Zai Qian.